The Motocross World Championship. Heroic riding on vast areas of rugged terrain, attracting spectators in their tens of thousands. A spectacle of jumps, countersteering and wheelies amid clouds of dust. The first Japanese manufacturer to compete in the Motocross World Championship was Suzuki.
フロンティア精神地ですか。
好きなことをやらせてくれたっていう感じですか。
相手に勝つことなのでね、レースは。それは勝った時が嬉しいですよね。
勝ついう執念っていうのはすごかったんですね。
チャンピオン取った時はね、地球は私を中心に回ってんじゃないかなって。
Just like Suzuki's achievements in road racing, success in motocross is a big part of the Suzuki story. In 1965, Suzuki was the first Japanese manufacturer to compete in the Motocross World Championship. The company was already a big success in road racing. It had shown the world its technical excellence and achieved results. Now Suzuki wanted a new challenge. The answer was a sport with a big following in Europe, motocross.
65年だったと思うんですけども、ロードレースがちょっと手がついた時に清水さんよりモトクロスターを設計してみようって言われたんです。日本にモトクロスターなんか一台もなかったもんですから。
モトクロスの世界選手権にね行きたいんだということでアプローチはしてあったんですよ。
Suzuki decided to take part in 2 Grand Prix in Sweden and Finland to assess the situation. The rider was Kazuo Kubo. He was a member of a team that was said to be the best in Japan. With him went Seiichi Suzuki, who'd ridden in the Isle of Man TT.
ロードレースの方もそこそこ軌道に乗ったもんですから視察がてら行くかということになりましたね。
The machine was the newly developed RH65. This was the first motocross bike from Suzuki. But the results were disastrous.
これがまたね、すごい代物だったんですよ。とにかくすごいバイブレーションだった。私はその時フィンランドでこけたんですけど、自分ではなぜこけたか分かんない。ストレートでこけてるんですよ。もうそれこそ振動で手が離れたっていう感じですね。
The bike vibrated so badly it was unrideable. The engine and chassis were not up to the demands of motocross. Suzuki had only raced as a preliminary trial, but the results were an undeniable embarrassment. Suzuki's engine technologies and chassis designs had beaten the world in road racing, but they were totally unsuited to motocross.
サスペンションがどういうものが適当かなんかいうことは全然わからなかったです。まあこの状態ではダメだなっていうことで結局そのままヨーロッパへ送り出しちゃったんですね。
With this defeat, Suzuki gained new challenges to tackle and the beginnings of a great future in motocross. Suzuki began pushing towards the top, just as it had in road racing. Suzuki competed in the Motocross World Championship again in 1966 and 1967. But problems the engineers had never imagined meant the team struggled to even finish the races. Reaching a world-class level remained a distant goal.
66年の時はね、私と小島君と通訳3人だけなんです。だからメカニックはもうあくまでその時はもう自分らなんですね。
Suzuki's development engineers were focusing on road racing. They were too busy for motocross.
まあ フレームはトラブルだらけでしたね。ダウンチューブがクラックが起こるなんかいうことはしばしばでしたね。
モトクロスっていうものに対してはまるっきり分かってなかったよね。
At the end of 1967, Suzuki pulled out of road racing because of changes in regulations. It decided to focus on motocross. Suzuki had to develop a new machine that could win races in Europe. So it signed one of the best riders in the world, Ole Pettersson from Sweden. And it reflected his advice in every aspect of development.
そうですね。68は真剣に取り組みましたもんですから。
ペテルソンは非常に真面目で、開発に一番初めライダーとしては非常に一生懸命やってくれて、現地でのテストもすぐフィードバックできましたし。
The key for the engine to win in motocross was not the peak power, but a wider torque range.
ですから振動がすごく多いというので、少しボアを上げてショートストロークにすればいいのかな。それから吸気系によって低速トルクをいかに大きく出すか。
With the chassis, the most important requirements were strength and lightness.
剛性の高いのを求めますでしょ、ロードレーサーの車っていうのが。だけどモートクロッサーはフレキシブルじゃなきゃいかんっていうようなことを。
着地した後の安定性がどうかということと、その土壌のによってそのタイヤのグリップ状況が変わるので。
Suzuki adopted original motocross designs for the frame and for parts such as the handlebars and muffler to create an ideal machine.
スイングアームにゴムブッシュを入れたり、フロントフェンダーはいつも道を見なきゃいかんだもんで、できるだけこう前を下げてくれとか。
Pettersson had a great talent for development. He met Suzuki's demands. And the new RH68 was born, with a look that was stylish and practical. A light, strong chassis and a torquier engine made this a machine that could really compete in the Motocross World Championship. Suzuki engineers had reached the top in road racing. Once they chose a clear direction, they were quick to make progress. They created a genuine motocross bike in what seemed like an instant. Suzuki had high hopes for 1968. It created a full-scale setup with the mechanic going to races. From the very first race, Pettersson and the RH68 showed outstanding performance that was unprecedented for Suzuki. But there was still room for improvement. Maneuverability was great, but there was not enough power in the low engine RPM range.
低速トルクをいかに大きく出すかっていうことに苦戦しました。
Suzuki launched a new engine at the next race, the Belgian Grand Prix. Suzuki took overall second place for the first time and showed rivals it was now ready to compete on equal terms. Pettersson came seventh in the year's rider standings in the 250cc class.
コースはグラスもあれば丘陵もあればいろいろあるんですけど、ベルギーとかオランダに多いサンドコースですね。ライダーが半分ぐらい隠れるぐらいの私とギャップが全周なんですよ。レースの質が違うというかね、これはとてもじゃないけど日本人が行っても走れないなと。
The following year, a new, improved RH69 produced 32 horsepower. Pettersson steadily gained points from the third race onwards. The results were third place in the standings for riders and second in the standings for constructors. The machine had delivered top-class performance, and Suzuki was now a top-class competitor in motocross. Then came the off-season. Suzuki was happy with the machine's performance. Now it took another big step forward. It signed two motocross superheroes from Belgium, Joël Robert and Sylvain Gebos. This film was shot when three riders came to Japan and tested bikes before the 1970 season. Also appearing is Mitsuo Ito, who conquered the Isle of Man TT in 1963. Clearly, Suzuki had high expectations for the new season. And the expertise of Joël Robert, Sylvain Gebos and Ole Pettersson had brought amazing improvements to Suzuki's machine. The RH70 produced a maximum of 30 horsepower, not so different from the RH69. But it gave better low and mid-range engine performance, and most importantly, better pickup at low revs. Suzuki engineers had reduced the bike's weight to just 83 kilograms. And the RH70 was the first bike in the brilliant Suzuki Yellow that came to be known around the world as Yellow Magic.
ギア比としては遅いのから速いのまで欲しいというやっぱ要望を満たすためには5速ということ。ロベルト・ゲボスもお前ら3速に戻すかって言ったら絶対嫌だって言いましたね。
The 1970s were a golden era for Suzuki. In the first race, in front of thousands of spectators, Robert and the RH70 easily won both heats, without allowing anyone to catch up. The speed of the RH70 amazed the European fans.
本当に速いライダーでしたね、ロベルは。
レースに対しては非常に一級品っていうのはもうスタートなんか抜群で、
ロベルのコーナリングは抜群でしたね。
ゲボスの方はね、どっちかっていうと細かくメカニックっていうことでね、車直すのが好きでね、それなんか部品でも作っちゃうんですね、自分で旋盤かけて。
These two star riders kept on achieving great success and competing with each other. They secured the 250cc class constructors title in the middle of the season at the 8th Grand Prix in the United Kingdom. Robert won the battle between the Suzuki riders and won the Riders' Championship. Robert was now celebrating his third consecutive title, and Suzuki had achieved its long-cherished goal of victory after 6 years of participation. The journey since 1965 had never been easy. Suzuki's success reflected a great deal of know-how from road racing. The keys included the way Suzuki determined the character of the engine by means of the cylinder port timing and exhaust chamber. And they included weight reductions by means of materials and processing techniques. The winning machine, the RH70, was exceptional, even among strong competitors.
軽量化については絶えずもう一日中考えてましたし、寝ても考えてましたし、マグネシウムで作りましたし、チタンも伝えるとこは使いましたし。
モトクロスの方が ライダーとの関係なんかはずっと近いですね、ロードに比べてね。それで非常にフレンドリーなところがあって、私はロードも面白かったですけど、モトクロスの方がより面白かったですね。
In 1971, Suzuki decided to compete in two classes. It would no longer race only in the 250cc class, but also in the 500. For the rider, Suzuki signed Roger da Costa. He was the biggest rival of Robert and Gibos, and the best rider at CZ. Suzuki now had the best riders for both classes. Also this year, Japanese rider Taichi Yoshimura raced in the 250cc class and achieved great results. Suzuki's prowess in development also enabled brilliant performance in the 500cc class. Da Costa won the first race, the Italian Grand Prix. The machine was the RN71, with a 367cc engine and maximum output of 41 horsepower.
250cc の延長です。フレームサイズなんかはほとんど250と一緒ですよね。
Suzuki showed great performance throughout the season, also winning the final race, the Dutch Grand Prix. Da Costa brought Suzuki the 500cc class constructors title in the company's first year of participation. And he won his first rider's title.
Da Costa は勝負に対する執念というのはまたすごくて、自分で航空燃料なんかを手に入れてきてこれ使ってくれとかね。
Meanwhile, the naturally talented Robert and Gibos shone in the 250cc class. Robert easily won both titles. Gibos ranked third. The class belonged to Suzuki. The company now dominated both classes. It followed Husqvarna and CZ as the third manufacturer to achieve this record.
やっぱりロベールですよね。ヨーロッパの当時なんかちょっとやっちゃって頭を取って優勝しちゃうっていうような。
非常に人の気持ちも察するいい男だと思います。
まあデコスターも結構こうガーッとくる時もあるしね。まあその方が車が良くなることね。
彼らの話を直接聞いて、次の年はどういう車が必要かと、それを探っているわけです。
In 1972, Suzuki was at peak performance. Robert won the 250cc class for the third year in a row. Da Costa had his second consecutive win in the 500. With this golden duo, Suzuki enjoyed victory in two classes for 2 consecutive years. All over the world, Suzuki became synonymous with motocross.
ゲボスとデコスタは違いました。ロベルはどんなどでもよかった。それは天才ですよ。
ライダーを見る目っていうのがちょうど日本のプロ野球の選手を見る目とかそういうのと同じ人気があるんですよね。
In 1973, Suzuki faced headwinds. A new regulation set a minimum weight as Suzuki had been winning so much. Bikes in the 250cc class had to weigh at least 88 kilograms. This meant the RH73 had to carry 9 kilos of ballast.
ロベールの体より軽いんだっていうようなことで、これ見ようって言ってロベールは車をこうやって抱いてこうやるんですよ。それからもう本当に モトクロッサーの性能自体はガコンとダウンしちゃうんですね。
Suzuki had lost momentum. Now it lost the 250cc title. In the 500cc class, the RN73 also had to be made heavier. DaCosta had been victorious 3 years in a row, but now began to struggle. He held on to the individual title, but Suzuki lost the constructor's title. (1973) was the year Suzuki began to slow down. (1974) brought a change of generations in the 250cc class. Robert and Gibos gave way to younger riders. Gaston Reyes steadily gained points and came 5th in the annual standings. In the 500cc class, DaCosta lost the championship and Suzuki did not win any titles. In the Motocross World Championship, 1975 was the beginning of a new era. The 125cc class was upgraded to the World Championship, and Suzuki took part. The promising newcomer Gaston Reyes achieved a crushing victory. He won 14 of the 24 heats and won the championship.
もう速いっていうよりもやっぱりテクニックがね素晴らしかったです。非常にもうこう的確にミスがなく走ってくる、滑るコースでも砂の中でも素晴らしかったです。
The machine was the RA75. Lay-down rear suspension made it much more competitive. No one knew that Suzuki was destined for 10 consecutive years of victory in the 125cc class. Also this year, a Japanese star was born. His name was Akira Watanabe. He was named best rider in the Japanese Domestic Championship in 1974 and got a chance to race in Europe. He won his first Motocross World Championship and ranked 4th at the end of the season. He had taken a big step toward winning the championship.
MFJ でチャンピオンは協会で世界選手権に行かしてくれたんですよ。でそこでそのベルギーのアマチュアの一番上のクラスで出ていきなり2ヒートとも優勝ですよ。
あの走りはガストンですね。だからそれに渡辺君が習ったっていうような感じでしたね。走りは渡辺君はよく似てました。
Meanwhile, in the 500cc class, Suzuki worked intensely on development in hopes of avenging its defeat the previous year. The company evolved a range of parts to improve the machine.
スズキのレーサーの整備室っていうのはでもうすごかったですよ。なんか不具合があると、もうライダーの要請がありますよね。もう徹夜してそれがずっと2週間続いた。
DaCosta won 7 races, including 3 in a row. He won the individual title for the 4th time and the constructor's title. In 1976, Suzuki's rider duo was DaCosta and Walsink, who was in his 3rd year with the company. They delivered incomparable performance and kept the competition far behind. DaCosta won the championship for the 5th time and the 2nd time in a row. Suzuki won its 4th constructor's title. DaCosta earned the nicknames the God of Motocross and Mr. Motocross. In the 125cc class, Gaston Reye won the championship for the second year in a row. Victory in two classes convinced observers that Suzuki was back to full strength.
勝っていっぱい飲んだとかお祝いをやったとかそういう記憶はないですね。
In 1977, Akira Watanabe came back to the Motocross World Championship after having to compete in Japan the year before.
伊藤光雄さんが、話聞いてくれて、俺はもう GP 行きたいですよっつって、じゃあちょっと待てよっつって、じゃあ専務に聞いてみようと。鈴木ね、修会長は当時専務だったですから、で専務室に連れてってくれて、で直接話聞いてくれたんですよ。
Watanabe got what he wanted. He rode well in the first race. Then in the second race, the Italian Grand Prix, he moved past Gaston Reye into the leading position.
もう当時のガストンはその時もう75年76年って2回チャンピオン取ってますからね、2連続。だからもうガストンともうこういうガチンコですよ。
But in the third race, the Belgian Grand Prix, Watanabe crashed during a big jump. He suffered a serious knee injury and had to give up the season.
着地でズリンと滑って、で左の靭帯3本切っちゃった。レースで自分の限界を試してたんじゃね、もう体戦ったって足んないですよ。
Watanabe immediately went into hospital and had surgery in Belgium. Some people said he'd never race again, but he was determined to get back in the saddle.
もうね、神も仏もないと思ったね。なんでこんな目に遭わなきゃなんないのか。
Meanwhile, Reye had a great season. He scored 7 wins and the championship. Suzuki won the constructors' title for the third year in a row. In 1978, Watanabe competed in the World Motocross Championship for the third time. He had more than just speed. He had learned the tactics and cool-headedness that were vital for a champion.
変わりましたね。もうそれの怪我でね、優勝しか狙ってなかったんで、77年っていうのは1位しかで、2番3番とかそのぐらいで、序盤は抑え気味にいって、そしたら途中から1位が取れるようになってきたんでね。
This season he showed clever riding and earned a place on the podium in most races. Then in the final Grand Prix, he secured his place as the first Japanese to win the World Motocross Championship.
いやー嬉しかったですね。いやチャンピオン取った時はね、本当にね、地球は私を中心に回ってんじゃないかなってそういう気分にもなるよね、もう世界一っていうのは。
Suzuki won 14 of the 24 heats, and it won the constructors' title for the fourth year in a row.
空冷はもう78だと思いますよ。車体は空冷のね、冷暖で、
車としてはもうある程度出来上がってた車ですからね、心配はなかったんですけども、やっぱり最後ゴールするまではもうヒヤヒヤドキドキでした。
その日の夜だけだよ、嬉しいのはゴールして瞬間と、もう次の日起きたらもうまた次のレースに向けてですからね。
But the rivalry between Watanabe and Reye had become fierce.
プロですからね、渡辺の方が速いんだみたいなことはなかなか言わないでしょ。あの頃はそういう時代じゃなかったんでね。
とにかく勝ってくれればいいと思って、壊れずに最後までは走り切って勝ってくれればどっちが勝ってもいいからと、鈴木の勝ちですからね。
A team only needs one champion. So the next year, 1979, Reye left Suzuki. In his place came Harry Everts. The combination of Everts and Watanabe was also invincible. They showed overwhelming speed and won 21 heats out of 24.
やっぱりチャンピオン取ったからゼッケン1番で走りたいっていうので79年も出たんですよね。でそれは実際もう右の膝もの靭帯も内側が切れてたんですよね。
The RA79 was the first Suzuki motocross machine with a water-cooled engine. It delivered consistent performance and suited both riders. Newly evolved lay-down suspension gave 310 millimeters of wheel travel. That's on a par with today's specifications. Everts won 9 Grand Prix and won the championship. Watanabe came second. Suzuki won the constructors' title for the 5th year in a row. The RA79 became the forerunner in the era of water-cooled engines.
良かったですね。全然熱だれもなくて、で渡辺明君、彼に言わせるとね、最高だよっていうようなこと言って、それまでは文句ばっかり言ってましたけどね。まあでもそういうことを我々に打ち明けてくれるから開発がどんどん進むっていうか。
パワーも出て良くなったんだけど、結局車体のウエイトバランスとしてはね、前が重たくなるわけですよね。そこがやっぱりまあ俺なんかどっちかというと78年の空冷のレイダウンサスでもうライディングを確立したみたいな感じだったんで、
やっぱり熱的に問題があるんじゃないかなということで、ですからもう空冷から水冷にしようということにしたんですけど、どうしてもいろんな問題が出てくるわけですね。例えばラジエーターの位置とか、泥のコースですとですね、だいたい20キロから30キロぐらい泥がついちゃうもんですから、めちゃくちゃ重くなるんですよ。
ハーリーなんかね、もうすぐ慣れてたんじゃないですかね、彼は。ラジエーターぐらいね、軽いもんですよ。
Our attention now turns to the 125cc class in 1980. Watanabe could not race because of his knee injury. The Suzuki factory team only had Everts in the first races.
一番好きな選手でしたね、デコスターとハリー・エバーツっていうのは。デコスターはもちろんだけど、それ以外の選手では一番好きな選手だったんですよ。
Everts battled on alone. Then he crashed in the 5th Grand Prix. A broken left arm forced him to miss races. Suzuki's savior was the 17-year-old Eric Gabos. He was a younger brother of Sylvain Gabos, who'd forged a golden era for Suzuki in the 250cc class.
ハリエバーズですね、私は。はい、左ブレーキだって右ブレーキだって乗りこなすって言いますか、小さな体でね、あんだけのスピードで走ってくる、どこも全開で走っていくような感じでですね、スピードに乗せて豪快さがありましたね。
Ultimately, Everts won 4 Grand Prix and won the championship for the 2nd year in a row. Eric Gabos took 3rd place. Suzuki won the constructors' title in the 125cc class for the 6th year in a row.
エリックもあんまりなんかあれだったんですけど、彼もまだ若かったですからね、やんちゃだなとは思いましたけど。
In the 250cc class, 19-year-old Georges Jobet won the championships for rider and constructor. These were Suzuki's first titles in quite a while. Suzuki now added victory in 2 classes to its impressive record. And in the middle of the season, Suzuki adopted full floater suspension. An evolution from lay-down suspension to a link-type design gave stability to the rear section and helped Suzuki win one race after another.
悪くないですよ、やっぱりギャップの走破性は。だけど乗り方がツインショックの乗り方なんで、どうしても体でそれをやるわけですよ、このレバー比の変化を。自分の体はこうやってても、今度はリンクが変化しちゃうんで反発を生むわけですよ。ああって合わないわけですよ。
フルフローターになりますけど、どうしてもあそこの位置にサスペンションがきますから、なかなかエアクリーナーボリュームが取れない。
フレームが邪魔だったもんですから、ちょっとフレームを左右非対称みたいなフレームにして、改善で来てる時っていうのは割とスムーズにつながってくるんですけど、ポンと変化点が発生した時にはすごくいろいろ難しいところが発生しまして、
これを乗りこなしちゃう人が出てくるわけですよ。ジョベとかエリック・ゲボスとか、ああいう若い連中ですよ、私の後の。ハリーと俺がね必死になって走ってるのにさ、エリックはまだ15、6歳でさ、パッと来て「おんがー」っつってもうトップ走っちゃうわけですから。
In 1981, Watanabe recovered from his injury. The Suzuki rider lineup became Watanabe, Everts, and Eric Gibos. Young riders had steadily improved and performed well. It became a close contest.
ハリー・エバーツと私とエリック・ゲボスの 3人体制だったんで、そこにリナルディとイタリア人、あとヤマハのベルケニアスっていうヤマハのワークス、この5人がチャンピオン争いだったんですよ。
The victor in this close battle was Everts. He won 6 heats out of 24. Eric Gibos won 5 heats. Watanabe was victorious in 2. Suzuki won the constructors' title for the 7th year in a row. In the 250cc class, Jobei led the championship at the beginning. Then he was absent because of an injury, and Yamaha later moved ahead in the race for points. Jobei was back in the saddle with his injury for the final Grand Prix in the Netherlands, but retired. Then Henk van Milo turned the tables on Yamaha and enabled Suzuki to win the constructors' title for the 2nd year in a row.
でも前半は私トップだったんですよ。オーストラリアグランプリも2番1番で優勝してますしね。まあでもね、81年はね、やっぱり体調も本当に良くなかったんですよね。
自分に悔しいんでしょうね。悔しさが出てるから慰めるっていうか、そういうのも現地では大変でしたね。
In 1982, Yamaha and Honda improved their performance in the 125cc class. They both showed spectacular speed in the first half of the season. Suzuki began fighting back in the 7th Grand Prix. Eric Gibos and the RH82 showed extraordinary capability. Gibos secured his first world championship at the 11th Grand Prix in Sweden. Everts came 4th in the overall standings. Watanabe, with no wins, came 7th. Suzuki had now achieved 8 consecutive years of victory in the 125cc class.
125はね、絶対負けないなと思ってました。3年ぐらい先のことまでちょっと頭に置いておいて、じゃあ次の年はこういうことやっていけばいいな、次はこういうことやっていけばいいなとか。
今でも一番速いっていう車は82年の車じゃないかと思います。
In addition, American rider Brad Leckie won the 500cc class. Suzuki regained the title, holding it for the first time since 1977. In 1983, Suzuki changed its lineup of riders in the 125cc class. Eric Gibos became first rider. And Michele Rinaldi from Italy joined the team. Eric Gibos began the season with 4 consecutive Grand Prix victories. He then came second twice and won the following 6 GPs in a row. He won the constructors' title in the 10th Grand Prix with incredible speed. Gibos himself became champion for the 2nd year running. Rinaldi took 2nd place. Suzuki had now won the 125cc class in each of the 9 years since it was established. Meanwhile, in 250cc's, Jobei won 9 GPs and claimed the championship for the 2nd time. He brought fresh excitement to a class where Suzuki had a strong tradition. But Suzuki announced it would not take part in the World Motocross Championship the following year.
リナルディは2年契約だったんですね。で83年の暮れに突然鈴木がレースから撤退っていうもんですから、 これは困ったなと思って、リナルディはもう1年あるもんですから、約束した契約金を払うと。だけどもあんたは好きなメーカーへ行って出てくれと言ったら、私は今の車さえ使わせてくれれば契約金も何にもいらないでスポンサーを見つけてやりますからっていうもんですから。
In 1984, Rinaldi took part as a privateer, but crashed before the season started. He missed the first races, then made a strong comeback. In the final race, he scored an astonishing victory and took the championship. Suzuki had now set a remarkable record: 10 consecutive years of victory in this class. In 1968, Suzuki had pulled out of road racing. And looking for new challenges, it had become the first Japanese manufacturer to take part in the World Motocross Championship. In the early 1970s, Suzuki made motocross history with superstars like Robert and Da Costa, and showed the world that it was enjoying a golden era.
こんな面白い仕事は、楽しいというかやりがいがあるというのはモトクロスの担当を辞めて初めて分かりましたね。
この前ちょっと見てみたらパスポート10冊あって勝つために行ってるだもんでね。
夢中という夢中でそのレース勝つだけが一生懸命でしたね。
嫌なことも進んでやると、そうすればいつか光が見えてくる。技術の磨くですか、実践で磨くわけです。
人生の中での一番くっきりと残っている部分でして、
だからやっぱりチーム力、その中で一員としてやれたことが良かったなとは思いますね。
勝って初めて鈴木の名前がヨーロッパにもアメリカにも広がるでしょうし、
チャンピオン取るストーリーの中にはやっぱり恵まれた人との巡り合いもありますよね。レーサーを作るセンスがすごい良かったですよね。世界 GP をみんな経験してる人ですからね、もう目は超えてますから。
自分が考えたことそのまま設計できますし、こんな楽しい職場はなかったんじゃないでしょうか。
Suzuki is synonymous with motocross victory. Behind that success are all the engineers and legendary riders who've been part of the team. It's thanks to their efforts and a constant pursuit of new challenges that Suzuki is the company it is today.
Interview with Joël Robert, first world champion for Suzuki in 1970.
And he said, at the end of the season, I think we invited to have a meeting together. But no, that was in July, a little meeting. He told me that Sylvain had signed with and finally I signed in end of November.
When did you ride the Suzuki factory bike R870 at first?
In Mont Fuji.
Mont Fuji.
It was right in the sand, was a lot of sand.
Yes, I think we were together.
Bombay.
We did the first test, we went together. Huh?
And we was crying, the bike was shit. Completely shit. Everything was broken. The shock absorber on the back, the front fork bent, the exhaust pipe explodes. But the bike was very, 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 very light, yeah. And the handling was good, very good. And after a lot of training, we never get tired, you know. When we received the bike in March, I think, the bike was better then.
Yes.
Front fork, shock absorber, good. But the handling was fantastic. Or every time the same, I got the same time every lap.
Yes.
And that was a good thing. It's the difference between CZ and Suzuki. Suzuki, you asked something, the afternoon or the next day you got it. CZ, when I had something, 6 months later we got it. There was completely different. And that was good, we enjoyed them.
Yes, I remember when we were testing in Japan, in Fuji or around Amamatsu, that when we brought up at the meeting at the evening, we brought up we wanted some changes, and the next morning we had such a big ice.
70 when we won there.
Yeah.
We nearly cry.